So Liberty Media might want Max and Lando to be teammates. Please no. This supposed idea of the owners of Formula One stinks. Now, generally, I've been okay with Liberty Media. Over the last few years, they made some very questionable decisions, but at the time I was like, yeah, okay, I kind of get it. Formula One does need to adapt and evolve with different tastes in sports and social media, getting younger people in, and just not being as fuddy-duddy as it used to be. I've been watching since 1998, and it was a little bit serious. I wouldn't say it was cool. Now, you could describe it as cool. But then again, it doesn't seem as authentic as it used to be, but that's another topic for another time. Or is it? This particular idea of liberties, if it's true, is terrible. And it could potentially damage friendships that go back to karting days. I saw on Formula Uno talks about the idea of Red Bull making up something called a dream team for 2025 or 2026, which would have Max Verstappen being partnered by another top tier driver. Who do you think it's going to be? Oh, okay. Does this mean that Daniel Ricciardo is going to come back in for at least a year to see what he can do with a modern Max Verstappen at the peak of his powers? Oh, is Yuki Tsunoda going to get his chance finally? After many years at AlphaTauri trying to keep them afloat, will he now get the chance to really go for it against Max? Liam Lawson might get his chance. Nope, it's Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris. Those are the two likely candidates that Helmut Marko wants to have, in theory, partnering Max Verstappen. This just raises the question, what are they thinking? They've got 12 junior drivers in the Red Bull Junior program, and now we're actually getting the idea of him wanting to actually downsize the junior program, Helmut Marko, to only keep the best of the best. Well, you've clearly not been the best of the best when it comes to picking people from your junior program. I mean, some of these drivers probably might not even get a sniff of Formula One, even as a reserve driver for AlphaTauri or something like that. You've been propping their careers up, giving them false hope, and now you might be dashing their hopes and probably consigning them to the bin of motorsport. They could potentially be excluding drivers from the two top seats at the Red Bull team for drivers who have no connection to the Red Bull program whatsoever. I don't like this idea from Liberty Media and encouraging Helmut Marko to sign top tier drivers for the top tier team. I do understand why they're doing it. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Liberty Media recognizes that Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc are some of the most famous drivers in Formula One right now. And they also recognize the connection that Charles and Lando have with Max Verstappen going before Formula One. We might get to see Charles Leclerc battling it out for a title with Max Verstappen in the same team. Sorry. Do you think really they would let anyone other than Max Verstappen go for a title? They'd only be brought in theory to then cause some drama. Same for Lando Norris as well. Trying to rekindle the possible passion and fireworks that we saw in the 2021 season, because Liberty Media is really struggling to find ways of making Formula One as hype as it was back then. Charles and Max, they have had fierce battles in the past. You know, the whole, oh, it was nothing, it was just an incident thing. But even when they got to Formula One in 2019, when they were in relatively equal machinery and vying for second place in the constructors behind Mercedes, they had many tussles, including Austria 2019 on the near final lap. Then in Silverstone, they had some really big ding-dong battles. And at the beginning of 2022, when it looked like the Ferrari was the fastest car and that Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen were going to be the two guys fighting for the championship, it was going to be mega. They have history, they are not afraid to attack each other on the track. Oh, it was going to be good. But then, of course, Ferrari did a Ferrari and then Max romped home with it. And we never really got to see that after Austria. Having them in the same team, I don't think that would work, because from what we've seen at Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, in order to thrive, needs a team that will put as little pressure on him as possible. These Aston Martin rumours for Charles, not too sure about that. Being under the thumb of Papa Stroll, is that any better than being under the thumb of Helmut Marko? Remains to be seen. And then you've got Lando Norris, and we all know that Max and Lando are great friends. They really like each other. They look out for each other and they maintain a really civil relationship to this day. Being in the same team as Max Verstappen won't work is because Max kinda doesn't want him to be in the team. During the British Grand Prix, Max Verstappen kinda wanted McLaren to keep Lando Norris and for Lando to not give up on McLaren and have faith in them that they would be able to turn it around by the time his contract comes up at the end of 2025. And that is something really interesting. That was really fascinating to understand what Max Verstappen is all about. He really values friendship and loyalty and wanting to see drivers thrive, provide him a challenge. And he believes that McLaren could be the ones to do it, because I remember when McLaren got third place at the Spanish Grand Prix, I think, in qualifying, and he did a double take, Max, to go, What's that McLaren doing there? He was really happy for Lando qualifying that high, even though that didn't work out ultimately in the race. Max's ideal situation is for him to be battling with Lando and Charles for the championship in separate machinery. He wants Lando to be in that McLaren, whatever it's going to be called, in an equal car to Red Bull's car, and then having an absolutely fantastic scrap for it. Because Max Verstappen getting these titles without any real challenge, that's all very well and good for the statisticians, but for Max Verstappen himself, I'm pretty sure it's not all that exciting. I think he wants to really fight for it. I think that first title in 2021, he's going to remember more fondly than 2022 and 2023 because, you know, there was no contest. And I think Liberty will actually get what they want without having to artificially meddle with driver lineups and encouraging Helmut Marko to make really boneheaded decisions when it comes to ignoring his own junior driver program that he's been championing for nearly 2 decades now. Max Verstappen is aware about if you are friends and you are in the same team, it could lead to disastrous results. Look what we saw with Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen in 2018. They actually had many flashpoints, and that is partly why Daniel Ricciardo left for Renault in 2019. And it didn't get too toxic. Now that Ricciardo's back in the Red Bull fold, they're firm friends again. All is good. Unlike what happened with Lewis and Nico. 2016, that was a really bad time for their friendship. I mean, it doesn't really exist anymore. And it was really starting to show the cracks in 2014, 2015, when the Mercedes car was clearly the dominant force and that a world championship was on for both drivers. They had been friends for a very long time in junior formulae, and to see that completely fall apart was kind of tragic. And even now to this day, they do not speak to one another. Even though Rosberg's constantly praising Lewis and showing the amount of respect he has for him, in any post-race interview that Rosberg is interviewing Hamilton, it's just really awkward to see, and you can tell that Lewis just does not want to be there. Max just wants to avoid a similar situation because, you know, he doesn't want to lose Lando as a friend. I think he'll do whatever he can to keep Lando away from Red Bull. But all of this consequently leads to Red Bull completely icing out any junior drivers, having Max Verstappen for almost infinity, or as long as Max wants to be there, and then putting in Leclerc and Norris, who have nothing to do with the junior program. What's that going to mean for other drivers? Will they try and convince other teams to take them? Well, no, because there are other junior programs as well. Look at the Formula 2 championship standings right now. The top 5 comprise of 5 different driver academies. You've got Frederick Vesti for Mercedes, Teo Porcher for the Sauber program, yet they do have one, Ayumu Iwasa for the Red Bull junior team, you got Ollie Behrman for the Ferrari driver academy, and Victor Martins for the Alpine academy. I don't think any of them right now are likely to be getting anything. I mean, except for Ollie Behrman, of course, because, you know, if Charles Leclerc leaves, then he could step in perhaps. The only plus side could be is that if AlphaTauri evolves into being more and more like a B team, so the Haas to Red Bull, maybe that might lead to 2 junior drivers getting in after all. But then you got Daniel Ricciardo in there, because he might just be kept there for a long time, because if they want Charles Leclerc at the top of Red Bull, then Daniel's just going to be holding station in AlphaTauri, which is now close to the Red Bull. Oh God, I'm getting a headache. No, you got Yuki there. Unless, of course, Yuki completely falls apart next to Daniel Ricciardo, and then he might lose the seat. So it's looking really, really tenuous for any Red Bull junior driver. And this is just making me think that driver academies are starting to lose their significance because of the fact that F1 is popular. F1 is popular, and therefore drivers who are really popular amongst the fans are more likely to keep their seat and stay in Formula 1 longer than they otherwise would have been when F1 was a bit more niche. I feel like more and more often these days, they don't get the time to fully understand what Formula 1 is all about. Yes, of course, if you fill the top tier teams with top tier drivers, then it means the lower teams might have options for rookies and they might be able to prove themselves there, but if the gap between the top teams and the bottom teams spreads more and more and more, then how can the young drivers score points? Because then the top 4 teams will have top tier drivers, they'll be taking all the points, and then the drivers might be lucky if they score 1 point. More often than not, they might just get the best 12th. That's why, by the way, we probably need at least 2 more teams on the grid. So that means more junior drivers can get the chance to drive for other teams. Nick De Vries, Mick Schumacher. I don't count his first season because that Haas was trash. And then Logan Sargent up until recently. After just maybe 5 or 6 races, people were just saying, oh, they're not good enough for Formula 1, get them out of there. But not too long ago, that would have been probably unthinkable. People would have just been saying, oh, it's his first season, wait until next year and see what happens. Just more and more often, there are so many good drivers in Formula 2 that people are clamoring for them to get into Formula 1, have their time, and then the people who were in Formula 2 and then go to Formula 1 just go, oh, they're washed, they're has-beens, get them out, they don't deserve to be here. It must be really difficult for them to actually handle Formula 1 with all of this negative sentiment towards you from the media, the press, and even sometimes your own managers and team principals. But the point of all of this is that the talented rookies are now actually heading for a glass ceiling, which is only getting thicker and thicker at the moment because Formula One is getting thicker and thicker in terms of its profit margin. With Liberty Media encouraging the likes of Helmut Marko to nurture top dream teams to try and really get more hype for the marketing side of things, they're not really considering the human side of it all. Max Verstappen, yeah, sure, it'd be really cool to see Lando and Charles in the same car, but would it be right? Is that what Max Verstappen truly wants? Because it is basically his team. I think that Max Verstappen thrives when he has a driver who he has really not that much connection with. Lando and Charles, those are two of the drivers who he has the most attachment to from his karting days, and I don't think they would be happy either, because they are #1 drivers at the teams they are currently at. If they went to Red Bull, they'd be #2 drivers. Let's be real here. Or would Helmut Marko actually allow them to fight each other, go equal in terms of the title? Charles in the same team would be disastrous. He would crumble. He would fall apart. Then you'd have Marko saying, oh, I don't know what I saw in him. Oh, he's an absolute wreck. Lando might put up more of a fight, but I think he's actually got something good at McLaren. Lando is loyal, and I feel like now his loyalty is being justified. And now he's got things to worry about with Oscar Piastri picking himself up. So I think he's already got other things to worry about other than having Max Verstappen being your teammate. So all of this entire article, it may be complete bunk. It may never happen. We might have Verstappen putting an end to this, saying, no, I don't want them there. What we don't need is artificial tension at the top, because all it's going to do is destroy friendships.